During the fallout of World War II and the dawn of the Cold War in 1952, a local chemist in the Siberian town of Mirny has discovered a weird substance found in the oil of a nearby refinery. With the country looking in all directions to improve their military power, soon multiple scientists settled in the town to further investigate the substance. Not long after, it was discovered that the substance could be separated from the crude oil with a strong magnetic field. After a couple of years of studying, it was been found that the substance was a completely new element. However, it couldn't be placed within the periodic table since it had no reaction at all when it was exposed to all the reagents that the scientists used. The lead scientist gave the element the name Mirnium after the town, quite suitable because similar searches for this new element were conducted throughout the country but with no results, meaning that Mirnium could only be found in the area of Mirny. Gradually more and more Mirnium was being collected from the oil. A general storage facility was developed with a large magnetic field to keep the Mirnium stable. The builders gave the name Magnus and placed it at the center of the town. The inhabitants of Mirny were intrigued by the Magnus and would often visit the town square to see it. Even though the collecting continued, the study of the element hit a dead end because nothing else special about Mirnium could be discovered. The only thing that it would seem to do is to spark lightly in the dark. A whole decade swept past with no further discoveries. However, during that time, 20 kilometers away from Mirny, in a place called Azagir, a secret proving ground project was being set up. Nobody knew exactly what was going on there, but in 1963, more and more military convoys were moving there. It turned out that there were several experiments with low-capacity nuclear charges conducted there. Eventually, those charges were also used in order to uncover more Mirnium in the old deposits where it was found. This, however, caused severe earth shocks, which unnerved the citizens of Mirny. This reached a boiling point at the start of October in 1963, when one of the nuclear explosives of Azagir hit a reservoir that contained pure Mirnium. Normally, this reservoir was only leaking slowly into the oil over the centuries, but now a bulk of Mirnium fell right in there. It seems that the nuclear explosion acted as a catalyst to activate the Mirnium, because all of the Mirnium started to react simultaneously. All the Mirnium. Underground, stored in the Magnus and in the laboratory flasks. Every particle dormant for the last decade went active. It seems that it wants to break free from the flasks and storages. It looks alive, conscious maybe. In the following days of the disturbance of the Mirnium, the town of Mirny experienced even more earth shocks, but also magnetic deviations and power shortages. Even though the officials declined any cause for alarm, the citizens noticed even more military convoys moving towards Azagir, and at night, a light that looks like an aurora could be seen emanating from there. This struck fear within the inhabitants, but before any attempt to move out of Mirny could be made, the officials stopped everyone in place by invoking a quarantine for the town. However, the quarantine only stayed temporarily because messages came that something terrible has happened in Azagir. It was relayed that the whole place has been lost. In fear of the same fate for Mirny, the officials decided on a full-out evacuation. But what actually happened at Azagir? This would become somewhat clear in the following days when the evacuation was in full swing. Citizens moving out of the town started to experience different times of day, despite being evacuated within one group at the same time. Also, different temperatures were experienced by several citizens at the same place on the same time. Some of them fully packed themselves in winter clothes and cloths while others walked around in only shirts, sweating even. In the more extreme cases, both frostbite and burns were discovered on some citizens. Shortly after, the first collection of rescue missions was commenced. One of the first convoys discovered a crashed plane. Going off the condition of the aluminium parts in the plane, it was found that the aircraft was been laying there for 10 years. However, after documenting the plane type and order number, the peculiar discovery was made that it was the same plane that was currently stored in the hangar with a demounted engine, with its next flight scheduled later that month. The missions continued, but when they reached the town, it was a dreadful scene. The town was dead, with no sign of any life. Violet dust, cracks and oil was discovered everywhere. It seems that the dust was the oil in consistency, but grown out of hand, that the density of the air became too thick to breathe. When the ground patrol reached the town center, it was discovered that the Magnus was gone. In a later recon mission, the Magnus was found once again, relocated half an hour away from its original location. Unclear how it got there. As the expedition went on longer and longer, more and more worrying discoveries were made. Different tanks were found, strange tanks, which were immune to ammunition. From the experience of the commander of one of the convoys, it was noted that the Mirnium has showed that it wants to go back and that it was disturbed. It created an army in order to avoid further disturbance. They attacked because the tanks of the expeditions were fully armed and equipped. However, the Mirnium was also guiding them throughout different realities until they came back, showing that if you wanted to help, the Mirnium rewarded you back. A continuous task of several search and rescue missions were conducted with squads of 5 armored vehicles. The tanks allowed the commanders to traverse the area without suffocation or restocking breathable air at a high frequency, and allowed a form of self-defense whenever enemy fire was met. These missions continued for several weeks, but one midday, the whole town went completely dark. An unknown electromagnetic fluctuation had engulfed Mirny. An airplane was sent to investigate further and also to get better footage of what was happening, since during the ground missions only a few sketches were handed in. However, documentation in the plane was hard and only a few aerial pictures were taken. They were flying blind, and as time progresses, the planes started to fly strangely. They observed weird scars and cracks, and intense blackness. Soon the inside of the plane was infected with a black or violet dust that was sticking to everything. Shortly after, contact with the plane was broken. A few months later, in 1964, the Interdepartmental Committee has concluded, due to the effect on mental health and permanent destructive impact, that Mirnium is an extremely dangerous substance of inexplicable nature. In the following year, the areas of Mirny and Azagir returned to somewhat normal conditions. However, both turned into ghost towns, never to be populated again. In March of 1965, this strange event has been fully covered up, and most of the Mirnium has been returned to the initial repository underground and sealed off. However, further development of the chemical industry implies resuming research activities and searching other ways for applying the matter.